Hey everybody, I'm going to go over the process I use to make biodiesel. I use biodiesel to heat my shop. I live up in central Canada. We can get temperatures up here average in the winter about minus 18 Celsius, which is about -1 Fahrenheit. And we can definitely get spells that we're hitting the minus 30, minus 40 Celsius, which is about minus 22, minus 40 Fahrenheit. So we can definitely get some cold chunks up here. So I need to keep my shop above freezing because I have paints and things in here that I don't want to freeze. So if I come in to do work, I'll either turn on my diesel heater, my Chinese diesel heater, or as a backup I have electric heat that I can just turn on to take the edge off. So I have a friend that owns a restaurant. They save me their oil, and I have a couple of other sources as well. So sometimes my oil will be fairly clean and you can see light through it. Other times I'll get oil that has been well used, but it can still be processed and you can still make biodiesel from this. It just might take a little more work, a little more soap, lye soap, to wash it out, and water to wash it out. But I'm going to go over the steps that I do to do this. So I'll do my batches in about 5 1/4 liters, which is about 1.4 gallons. And I'll do them in 3 batches of about 5 1/4 liters, or 1.4 gallons. So I'll take my oil, put it in my pot. Now, if your oil's a bit chunky, got bits of French fry or batter or whatever in it, then you want to filter it. So a good suggestion is just to use a cheap coffee filter. I got this at the Dollarama dollar store, and it's a little metal coffee filter that's easily to wash, and it won't plug up. If you use a paper filter, it tends to plug up too quickly, and it makes it too messy and too slow to do. So I'd suggest getting a little metal mesh filter like this, or some sort of a mesh sieve that can take out the chunks. Put in my 5 1/4 liters. The reason I do in smaller batches is I just don't have a pot big enough to do it, and it gets a bit messy and difficult to deal with if it's more than 5 liters. So I put it on a little hot plate, and I'll heat it up to the required temperature. So I put it on, I'll heat it up slowly, and keeping an eye on it. I have a thermometer that I'll show you that I use, and I give it a stir every so often as well. So while I'm heating up my oil, I'll stir it occasionally. I'm just using an old chopstick, wooden chopstick. So I'll keep stirring it, and occasionally checking the temperature of it here. Let me just grab my thermometer. Pardon me. And I'll just keep checking the temperature. So I'm watching that I want it to hit about 130 Fahrenheit. So right now I'm at about 111, so it's got to go a little longer. And so while I'm heating up the oil, I'll keep mixing my my methanol with the lye soap. I just want to get all the little white pieces of crystal to be dissolved. So for the lye soap and methyl hydrate mixture, potassium hydroxide, lye soap, I'm not going to go into detail how I measure and calculate the amount that I need to use. That's going to have to be a separate video. There's a fair amount of calculations and pre-setup and measuring and stuff that has to happen. So I'm going to need a separate video to explain that in detail. And there are other YouTube videos that explain that quite well, and I will do one. Just for now, I'm just showing how I mix, wash, and settle my my mixture to make the biodiesel. So stay tuned. Try and break them up a little bit, give them a stir. And if you keep this agitated, it won't take that long to dissolve. And as I said, it keeps it'll warm up. It gets a bit warm, the container, and just got to watch that you have it ventilated properly. So I'll just jump between stirring my oil, keeping an eye on temperature, and mixing my methyl hydrate and lye soap mixture. So every so often I keep stirring my oil and checking the temperature. You don't have to stir it constantly, but you just want to stir it. So here we go. It's hitting. It's at 130, about 135, which is just above where it should be. I'll turn it off and double check my methanol lye soap mix. Everything's dissolved. There's a tiny bit of I'm going to say, almost looks like salt at the bottom, just between salt and flour. Very small particles of white. What it is, it's just some contaminants and other stuff within the lye soap that doesn't dissolve, and it's pretty well unavoidable, but I don't think it harms anything. It'll just wash out. So basically it's lukewarm to the touch, and everything's dissolved in there. And my oil's up to temp. I've turned off the unit, and I'll show you the next step here. So the next step for me is to take my oil that's heated to 130 or just above Fahrenheit. I'll take my oil and I'm pouring it into an old gas can. I find it's good to use as a vessel to mix it in. It's sturdy, it doesn't leak, and it was handy. So I'll pour my oil in here. I'm using an oversized funnel. It really makes a difference, because if you use anything smaller, I find you spill and you make a big mess. So I'll just let all the oil go through. This funnel that I'm using has a small stainless steel little mesh filter in it. So if there's any particles that happen to have made its way this far, it will be filtered out. I'll try and put a link in the comments or description below as to the type of funnel that I'm using and any other parts that I have. So here everything's filtered out. I'm going to take my methanol that's been mixed up, methanol with lye soap, and I'm just going to pour it in here. Sort of rinse the sides of the funnel. Get every drop. And there we go. And I just take the lid, turn the lid on, and then I just sit here for 20 minutes with everything sealed off nice and tight so nothing spills out. And I just mix it. I just agitate it for 20 minutes. 1 or 2 times at the beginning. You'll get a lot of off gas. I'll let that bleed out. Otherwise it pressurizes the tank and it tends to leak out any oil because it's been pressurized. It's trying to get out. So if you relieve the pressure, it's less likely to leak on you. And basically I'll just do this for 20 minutes, agitating it. And so I'll have the radio on, or I'll pull out my phone and scan emails or whatever while I'm doing this, and let that go for 20 minutes. I'll see you back. Okay, so I'll take my oil, my mixed oil, and I'll pour it into my, my settling tank is an old glass carboy, and sorry, I just gotta take it off the mount here. So it's an old glass carboy where I've cut the hole, I've cut the top, which was the bottom, so I have it upside down, and I have a hole cut through so that I could pour my oil in there, and it allows it to settle. So I pour it in, and then on the bottom I have just some plumbing fittings that clamped on there with a hose and actually a little spigot, an old water valve on there as well. If I want to get the water valve, the bigger valve is if I want to hook up a hose and get the liquid out faster. But I've found just having the smaller hose on there works fine enough. It keeps it a little more controlled and easier to manage. So there, I'm going to repeat that 2 more times, and then I'll show you the next step. So after a couple of days of settling, you can see that all the glycerin and other contaminants have settled to the bottom. So then I'll just use the hose, the little plastic hose, or maybe even the drain valve on the bottom to siphon off all of the glycerin and throw it away. And then I'll move on to the next step. When draining off the glycerin, this is where the bigger valve comes in handy, because the small hose can be a bit slow in draining off the bulk of the stuff. So if you just open the valve up, you can siphon off the glycerin a lot faster. So you just do a couple pours like this, you get the bulk of it out, and then when it's down to just trickling near the end, then you can do the remaining with the hose, and you can control it a bit more so that you don't accidentally drain off good oil. So you get the 90-95% of the glycerin off with the big one, and then the remaining with the little one, you can control it a bit better. So all the glycerin, water and stuff, all the junk, I just pour it back into one of the empty containers, and then it goes into one of the big oil drums at a restaurant. The same bin that the restaurant uses to dump their oil is where I put all my glycerin, my remaining oil, water, and stuff like that I wash off. So the washing step. So in the summer, I'll just run this off the tap, off the garden hose. But because it's like minus 40 Fahrenheit right now. We're having a bit of a cold snap. I just have to use tap water. So I just have an old water jug that I filled with tap water, and I'm just running a little plug-in pump to feed it up to a little spray hose. So this gives I think it's meant to put in the garden for putting a fine mist on your plants. But running it off this pump, it's not quite as good as the garden hose running because you have more pressure, but it's enough to give a mist because you want as fine of a mist as possible. The smaller the water particles, the more it's going to go and capture the additional glycerin and contaminants and stuff that's in the oil, and then it's just going to settle it to the bottom. So here, I'll run it. It's going to be noisy, so I probably can't talk over it. So I'm just going to stop it for a minute so I can talk. So I'll basically spray water in here until it gets, till about here, and then I'll let it sit for a while. You don't have to let it sit for a full day, but at least a couple hours. Sometimes I'll leave it till the next day or later on tonight, likely. So maybe 6 hours, something like that. And you'll see that it's going to get cloudy, but eventually it'll settle down again, and you're going to get water with, it's going to look like white soapy water basically on the bottom. And then just like I did with the oil, I'll probably just use the small hose from here on in, and then I just dump it into the same container that all the glycerin and that goes into. But it'll take a number of runs to do this. So I'll run this, fill it up till about here, let it sit 6 hours or so, and then drain it off to get all the water and soap out. And you'll have to repeat this a number of times. So I'll continue it on and show you as we go. So here's another batch to drain. So I just take my hose. So another wash. That oil is going to start coming out of the hose. And when I switch just switch to letting it go into the cup. That way I'm not accidentally draining any oil into my pail. So now I'm just getting oil. Later on I'll just take that cup once everything settles, and I'll just use my baster to siphon off the good oil. And then I repeat adding water again to wash it. So it could take, it depends how dirty and how much soap was remaining. It could take 3, 4, 6, 8. It could take a number of washes. I suspect, and I believe, if I'm a little more patient in between and let the stuff settle, I could just leave it instead of washing it so much. I could just leave it to settle, and it would probably take less washes if you let it settle longer in between. But anyways.
Referring to with me, and it's been shown that they're saying, that suicide is, they're saying it's the second leading cause of death among middle-aged.
So last batch here, I let the oil sit overnight, and all the soap and contaminants settled to the bottom, so it looks like it's clear. I could probably give it one more wash, but because I'm running this in my diesel heater, I'm not too concerned about the oil being 110% clean. Sitting in the tank, the gas tank that I have, it's gonna stuff's gonna settle in there anyways, and a little bit more if it needs to. But for me, this is good to go to burn in my diesel heater. So all I'll do is drain off the dirty water, soapy water at the bottom, and then I'll transfer this into my tank for my heater. So this batch is done. So now I've got the water drained off, so I'm just left with oil, and so now I'm gonna just siphon this into a container, and then this will go into my tank for my diesel heater. Now that my biodiesel's done, I just take it and I siphon it into my my tank for my my diesel heater. Reason I siphon it in is I don't want to. I know I have some gunk, maybe a bit of water, a bit of soap and contaminant at the bottom of this drum. I don't want to agitate it by pouring it in aggressively, so I'll just siphon it in slowly, and then that way I don't risk mixing up the junk at the bottom. So that's it. On to the next batch.